All right, I think we got some music off there now. So, welcome everyone. I believe we've got participants slowly keep climbing here. So we paused just for a few moments to make sure everyone gets in. But I see it looks like we're at about 58 right now. So we will get this party started. Like to start by welcoming everyone to kind of a wrap up of what we've put out over the last couple of weeks, just with some videos and some information related to the Ultra SR. We're calling it our Super Rad Social Series. So today we're going to be going over a few things. We've tried to break up into some sections. We're going to have the Ultra SR origin and design, residue management, the Ultra Pro 2 metering, filling, as well as what's next for the Ultra SR. Before we get started, we'll just go over some housekeeping items. You're going to see towards the bottom of your screen, if you move your cursor or if you're operating on your phone, if you just tap at the bottom, you are going to see that there'll be a poll being launched. The poll is just 3 simple questions that we're interested on. It might act as a bit of a conversation point throughout our show. The chat portion at the bottom of this webinar will be disabled. What we will have in the chat portion is some YouTube links. Due to bandwidth or internet quality, we are going to not really use much video on today's event. It'll be more still photos, whatnot. The YouTube links will be able to show some video activity on that. The Q&A portion of the bottom is where you will have the ability to ask questions. If you click on the question portion, that's where you're going to be able to submit it, and we'll be able to either answer it live on here or in text. We're going to do our best job to answer all the questions today. If we don't, or if we run out of time, if there is too many, we'll do our best to follow up with some of you on those questions. We are scheduled for approximately 45 minutes, as this is our first endeavor into a Q&A and a webinar. We may end early, we may go over. I've been accused before of talking too much, and I'm sure that will happen. So we'll get this moving. A quick introduction. Myself, I'm Anthony DeGlaney. I'm Director of Sales and Product Support here at Seedmaster Manufacturing. And as well, we have along with us today is we have Marcel. Marcel, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure, yes. Thank you very much, Anthony. Marcel Van Stavern. I farm in the Creelman, Fillmore, Stoughton area. It's a joint venture partnership. It's a fairly large farm. It's a combination of myself and 2 brothers and 2 nephews, and now my 1 son is involved in the farm. So we tend to get along, and that's been part of our success. So yeah, yes, it's just been a 25-year farm operation as a partnership.
And Marcel, you got a chance to run one of actually the original Ultra SR prototype a little bit this season.
Yes, we did. Yeah, we had a great opportunity with you guys. We had a last-minute expansion on the farm, and so we're a little bit tight on seating, and so we thank you guys very much for making that work out. And yeah, it did work really well. We had no issues at all.
Okay, excellent. All right, so we will dive right into our first part, which is the Ultra SR kind of overview, the origin, concept, and design. At any point, if you guys have questions on stuff that comes up, don't be afraid to throw them in the question and answer, so we can go through that. If I skip over it, it's most likely because I'm waiting, because we're going to address it at some point anyways. But as mentioned, don't be afraid to start. So where does the idea of the Ultra SR start? I had a few questions to Norbert about where this started, and he summarized it up maybe in one of the better statements is residue has been on his mind for 25 plus years. And with that, the idea of how to handle residue without changing or compromising the design of the opener and the placement and the accuracy that brought was a key to it. So if we're looking at a timeline specific to the Ultra SR, you could say the residue wheel patent was filed approximately about 6 years ago. So that's dating back to some of our design. with the residue wheel patent came the idea and the known that the design for this entire unit would be a single rank design. When Norbert talks about what he kind of constantly uses as maybe some drive factors in that, a statement he mentions that I pull out is chasing the perfect row. And one thing we know Residue does with a traditional unit of 3 or more ranks is in heavy residue years, we do see clumping or whatnot, and the ability on a multiple rank drill is usually that residue clump is sitting over top of a row. And this is where the Ultra SR's design comes into doing its best job at achieving that perfect row. So as the residue wheel and the single rank design started to come to life within the engineering team, some of the core values of what the Ultra SR would became quite clear. If we were to summarize what the Ultra SR is in a pretty basic statement, it is a simple, operator-friendly, highly accurate, no-till air drill that is affordable with a key emphasis on return on investment. And as we go through some of the specs and design stuff, you're going to probably hear me refer to simple or return on investment. You know, there's a lot of equipment manufacturers around the world that make seeding equipment and get to seed in all types of soil and conditions. And one thing I think we can all say without a doubt is there is no perfect seeding tool exists out there yet today. And the Ultra SR, you know, still fits that. It's not perfect for one, but where I'm going with that is, if we're chasing the perfect one, affordability or return on investment will quickly go out the window. And keeping it simple and operator friendly in mind, and that's what brings us back to the core values. So the spec of the Ultra SR, I'm just going to bring up a screen here to share, is as you see here on that. So we are a 60-foot wide seeding tool at 15-inch spacing. It makes use of our traditional dual shank or dual knife opener. We have 735 bushel capacity on the unit. That's 300 of that towards the seed knife, and the remainder of 435 towards the fertilizer knife. It is a complete one-piece unit in the Ultra SR. And when I mean by one-piece unit, we will see that it is tractor mounted with one single pivot point. We are trying to maintain a tight, complete unit, and this then leads towards our return on investment in that tractor horsepower or just tractor requirements in general are reduced. When we look at tractor requirements for the Ultra SR, depending on land and soil types, 375 horsepower and up are what's required. 36 gallons per minute and up for hydraulic flow, and then a alternator or electric requirement, since we do run electric meters, of a 200 amp alternator or up on that. When we're looking at some of, I guess, the key things on the single rank is in design. While the unit as a whole is quite a bit different as a unit, we're not redesigning and completely designing everything from the start. I mentioned the opener is realistically still the same opener that we've used from the start in our dual knife opener. So when you're designing a new air drill, you know, key things that matter the most in putting a crop into the ground are the opener for placement, and then the meters for metering accuracy and flow. So that's the other portion or key portion of this drill, is the fact that we are making use of Ultra Pro metering, which that concept or that specific design has been around since 2017. And then the design or theory of how that metering works has been around for a long time with the use of Valmar. The single rank, I guess, or why a single rank matters. So when we mention single rank, all our openers are in one entire row instead of spread over 3 rows or depth of a machine to allow trash flow. So we believe approximately you have 3 times the more responsiveness to uneven terrain. And I'm going to show a picture here that we get from our dealership up in the Peace Country and Peace Country Equipment. Now this is obviously an exaggeration of flexibility just over a laneway approach, but you can see right here that with all the row units on one single rank, that our ability to follow ground terrain and have even placement row to row is exceptional. Another key thing that we do gain from the benefit to the single rank is probably one of the biggest ones on the fact that you have easy access to the unit in general. We hear countless times about crawling through an air drill, and we're not alone on this to change depth, make any changes, adjustments, just check on stuff. With the single rank design and the fact that all the openers are at the rear, the operator, the owner, someone that's maybe coming to do a check, you have the ability to do a walk around and inspect and check just so much easier than you had before, let alone doing maintenance. I hear lots of conversation from whether it's farm shows or with customers about adjusting depth, and can you make depth adjustment easier? Well, if I own a precision drill and soil conditions, moisture, or just by the field change, and I believe a 1/4 inch of depth adjustment is going to make a difference, the fact that you easily assess it or access it and have that ability might make you in a pinch of time think, well, okay, it's only going to take me 10 minutes, 20 minutes to adjust depth on here compared to half an hour or more and the need to crawl through a drill. So this is where we mentioned just ease of access and keeping things simple in design. So I'm going to open up. I don't believe I have any questions yet that have come in yet on design, but some stuff that make the Ultra SR again unique outside its design would be its axle or its rank height sensor. And so one thing we have, I'll bring up here. Whoops, that's not the right photo I'm after. It does show. Bear with me here for 1 second. Actually, I guess that maybe is the photo I'm looking for. So what you're seeing here is the transport lock on the axle cylinder, but the rear axle, or the only axle that is on the Ultra SR, is constantly adjusting once you're into field mode. What's common on a lot of precision drills is because seed depth is related to your packer tire, frame height or a fixed frame height becomes essential for the geometry of penetration. So we have on the back of the drill a rank height sensor that will be constantly sensing the height of the rank. So if you're coming over uneven grounds, let's say a hilltop or a low valley spot, and as you come through it, because we do have some depth of the machine that's normally gauged by your front casters and your rear casters of the drill, the rank height sensor picks up that change in ground and adjusts the axle accordingly. So we're trying to maintain that perfect rank height, which maintains a perfect ground penetration, and again, keeping that placement very accurate. Shifting on design, a item that comes up as conversation point constantly is potentially the steel drum that is out there on the wing. And why do we make use of a steel drum instead of a tire? Going back just to the side photo of the SR, you will notice that the rank or the row unit is tight against the rear axle, and that is due to the geometry required as well as weight transfer. With maintaining that, we unfortunately lose some of our ability to put a castering wheel out front due to space and folding at the rear of the tank. So therefore became the requirement to put a wheel or a outside gauge wheel tucked underneath on the toolbar. And this is where the idea of going back towards maybe old school idea in a steel drum allowed us. We were able to control the design in the physical size, shape, and everything to tuck it tight underneath the wing and allow for that folding. What this also does is, because we've removed a tread pattern of a tire, and because we can design this, is we've actually created a slight pitch or angle on that drum. And when you're doing a tight turn at a headland, it actually minimizes ridging or dirt piling. Now, that's not saying you, the operator, can't still make a ridge if you tried an aggressive turn in conditions that may not allow it. But if we were to put a tire in that place compared to a drum and what it leaves for a field finish at the end of the field, you would notice that the steel drum is quite a bit smoother. The nice thing is we do know stubble is tough on tires, and I don't think the stubble is going to puncture a steel drum. So just a conversation point that we do have come up quite a bit. I'm going to switch gears here a little bit and stop talking myself. Marcel, do you want to maybe make some comments in relation to yours on row spacing, I guess, on how you see row spacing, how long you farmed with that?
Right. Sure. Yeah. So back in 2002 was our first run at 14-inch spacing, and in fact, it was a Borgo that they custom built a 14-inch spacing drill for us. And my guidance came from Dr. Guy Lafon from the Indian Head Research Farm, and so he had done a lot of forensic research. He's a guy with a white lab coat on and a PhD, and on his hands and knees assessing. And so we became very comfortable with going to wider rows beyond 12-inch. And so Guy is my mentor, I guess, and other research from other research farms. Indian Head's 1 hour from my operation, so I became very comfortable with wider rows. And so yeah, we began with Seedmaster in 07, the 14-inch, and so yeah, we've got 20 or 18 years, I guess, now on wider rows. And I guess ultimately, I was going to make a comment about the double knife technology, and I made a comment earlier today about how one of your competitors have invented the double knife drill this week, and so it's a compliment to you guys. And we use anhydrous ammonia, so we're pushing boundaries. We're pushing boundaries with our fertilizer type, and we're pushing it through the width of our seed rows. So we're not seeing issues. We've been growing flax, we've been growing canola, and going with very high rates of nitrogen with canola specifically, going through prescriptions, etc. And we're not seeing any issues. So we're very pleased and very happy with the kind of seed safety we're getting, and then our overall results are supporting the years and years of research out of IHAR for Indian Head on great yields through wider rows. So yeah, so I want to make that known, I guess. And yeah, we grow soybeans, we grow lentils, and we have grown peas, not for a few years, but canola and wheat and durum and a little bit of oats, and we've seen no issues at all. Even with lentils, lentils, one of your poorest crops for crop competition to weeds, and it just seems to work well, and our yields are incredible. Last 2 years, over 40 bushels an acre of red lentils, and they're just they seem to be really enjoying the environment of being wider apart. And whether it's a disease factor, it's usually a combination of small things, but at the end of the day, we do not have a train wreck here. It's working very well, and I think I have another image here that shows how clean our fields are. We're not using residual herbicides beyond the perimeters of our fields. We're only spot spraying and doing that kind of thing, and then we're blanket applying herbicides across the field, but not residual products. So yeah, we're really pleased with how the wide rows are working for us.
There, I believe I've got up one of your cleaner ones of from harvest time, yep. Marcel, with that. I see we've got a few questions. So specific maybe to cereals, Marcel. do you change stuff with your seed rate or what you're after for plant population when you're using the wide row spacing?
Well, so we don't, and I'm thinking we're missing an opportunity there. I really do, specifically with canola, as we're spending up to $14 or $15 a pound for canola seed. I think I have an opportunity to restrict some seeding rates and accomplish the same thing. But so far, because of limited data that way, we have been running the same type of plant targets that everybody else is on a square meter basis, and so we're doing the same as everybody else. And we run with Crop Pro, to name drop, I guess, a significant company of great people, and so yeah, we're trying to target 30 plants per square foot or 300 plants per square meter in the case of cereals, and
Okay.
and or 7 plants per foot a row, and yeah, we're putting more seeds per row, but you know, I had an opportunity this past year at the Durham Summit in Swift Current, and a very keen Ag Canada researcher talked about how you cannot seed cereals too heavy. They will simply self-thin. They'll simply choke out the weaker seedlings. And in general, his statement was, you just can't hurt yourself by putting too many seeds in a row. And so that was very interesting from his observations.
So yeah, that's good. I know our dealer up in the Peace, I mentioned before, Rich with Peace Country Equipment. I know one of the things that he pushes, regardless of row spacing, for customers to try is specific to cereals is upping. You know, if we're looking at wheat, upping your seeding rate from maybe, if you're still running a traditional 120 pounds to getting that higher to 170, even 200. Now this is obviously related to your region, your your variety type and that, but with some of the ideas, regardless of row spacing and adding competition to remove tillering and really push that out. So when we as a manufacturer look at row spacing and have the argument, the Seedmaster Research Farm, which is Southeast Saskatchewan, has done yield tests and studies themselves using a 15-inch Seedmaster and comparing to a neighbor's 10-inch Seedmaster. And year-over-year data is yet to really prove a difference on that. Myself is not having a crop farm. I always push the question back now is, well, what percentage of your full operation is cereals? We never get the argument on canola that row spacing is bad. So are you limiting your operation by focusing more on cereals for your seeding tool? And then the bigger question I push on, and we hope to have, we will have follow-up details on this, is just the return on investment of the seeding tool. When we look at 12 inches to 15, we know that's a 20% reduction in material on it. So if I can save you 20% of openers, which have a price per opener when we price out drills, I can save you 20% of the hosing that you're going to need to replace and 20% of the knives that you're going to need to replace, potentially 20% of the fuel that you're going to burn pulling that, and arguably, can I save you a full tractor size on that? You know, over 5 years, that's a dollar amount that adds up. So it's a bigger part to the picture we want to have more conversations on, is what does your ROI on investment of a seeding tool look like, and how can we help your bottom dollars? So so I appreciate that. I'm just going to answer some of the questions that are on here. With 15-inch centers, how necessary is it to run a blockage monitor? Blockage is something that I would say from a manufacturing standpoint seems to be more of a higher take rate than it has been in years past. It comes down to you as the operator. I know operators that don't have it, that do a fantastic job on paying attention to everything that's going to affect the ability to have blockage. Marcel, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't run blockage?
That's correct. Yes, like we have cameras that we're using cameras. Like we have onboard tanks in all 3 of our Seedmasters, and we depend on the camera technology and to do a forensic job of keeping an eye on the hoses in case they were to come out or something, which is another benefit here with the new SR. We enjoyed that. Yeah, because all of us keep getting a year older, and so we're eyeing up the SR as something that's nicer to better manage.
Okay, no, perfect. John asked, can you put liquid with the seed? So right now, the way the Ultra SR is designed, we are still currently running with the plans of a 60-foot unit dry-only operation. In the future, we definitely look to add some kind of liquid variation to add to the unit, but for the interim, it will continue to be a dry-only variation. That's not picking on the liquid people of the world. When we look at it just simply from a volume of units out there, dry product as a whole still reigns supreme from a global aspect of the air drill market. We're lucky here in Saskatchewan specific. We have a great pocket close to Regina of liquid that usually comes down to some awesome input suppliers that push that, but that is the current version of the Ultra SR will stay as a dry variation for now. Marcel, the one question on here is, do you apply NH3 in the fall or spring?
Yeah, twice now we have fall applied anhydrous. We try to take advantage of opportunistic pricing opportunities, and the 1 year is definitely a price motivated operation. And then last year with the excess moisture, and there's typically is a price advantage in the fall. So yeah, we were motivated then too. And then matter of fact, this spring we did some spring anhydrous banding simply because of COVID, and we had lessened assurance from our two providers that they could guarantee us delivery this spring. So we were concerned about all that, and we had again high water table, high moisture. So we felt we could sacrifice a little bit. But so typically, historically, 95% of the time, we are applying ammonia while we seed.
Perfect. We have a question on here. What happens when it builds up with mud? Is depth compromised? Now, I'm going to answer this two ways because I know that question came up earlier. So if that question is in regards to the opener, the Packer tire is a semi-pneumatic tire that does have some flexibility. What we usually see with mud buildup on the Packer tire itself is it will only build up to a certain extent before it starts shedding. In right conditions and gumbo-like soils can get to excess. At times, I would say it can. Usually when that's the case, I would say seeding operation is probably becoming to a limiting part at that. There is some great aftermarket manufacturers that make some different mud scrapers. We as a seeding manufacturer have stayed out of that intentionally, mostly because we do see wet conditions as a small percentage of the year-over-year issues. I know that is different this year. I know Peace Country Equipment on their demo Seedmaster Ultra SR did run some of the Devlo mud scrapers this year. I believe from all aspects had really good success with those. So that potentially is an option. As of for Seedmaster, I don't see it. If the question in regards to mud buildup was related to the steel drum, it does have, I'll just bring it back up, a mud scraper on the back side. And so we are limiting that if this continues to build up, it won't build up to a certain extent, and then it'll go. Can you bring it through wet spots and it stops rotating? Absolutely possible. It will usually push for a little bit and then roll over. Really changing, not making any worse of a rut compared to a set of casters trenching in that aspect. Jalef with Peace Country Equipment has asked you, Marcel, what have you seen as far as disease pressure or reduction on wider row spacing? In the Peace Country on 14-inch machines, we've seen significant drops in disease. Oh, and I see that question is actually from Rich under Jalef's name, I see. So.
Okay. So I guess, I wish I was more forensic and could speak with facts and figures, but I can't. I'm a producer, and
Yep.
I guess I, just have a degree, I guess, so on my farm. But ultimately, I guess as a durum grower, I feel that we are typically getting at least average, and I would tend to say above average success in the quality department. And I would never want to stand in front of a whole room of people and say it's strictly because of row spacing. It's a combination of things. Again, maybe concentrating those seeds in those wider rows and having less tillers and trying hard on your timeliness of fungicide, etc. So to me, it's always a combination of factors, but I can't not think that a wider row allowing more air through is helping our derm production and helping to minimize our fusarium head blight that derm is so susceptible to.
Perfect. I know there's a question here for you, Marcel. Have you done yield trials on cereals between 12 and 14 or wide row spacing?
No, I haven't. And again, I just pick on myself for it's like our harvest is annually. It seems to be a rodeo, and I just feel I'm just not qualified to do a great job. I think from what I've seen 1 hour away at the Indian Head Research Farm is that you need to have a white lab coat on in your PhD, and because we're not talking about 5 or 8 bushels here, we're talking about parts of a bushel and or 1 or 2 bushels perhaps that you may observe, and I would do a terrible job of trying to measure that. And so there's no credibility to what I could bring to the table there. But so I'm comfortable to know that my sacrifice is small, and I think it's a good part of my success with maybe reducing some disease pressure. But I can't recite anything about tan spot or septoria and or fusarium head blight that would be replicated statistical data that would bring value to this conversation.
No, perfect. Well, thanks, Marcel. I know there's a handful of questions here related to the residue wheels. So I'm just going to move on a little bit and talk briefly about the residue wheels and keeping this moving. So the residue management system, which we refer to as the residue wheels or commonly get nicknamed the trash wheels, is really what makes the SR, the single rank, possible. So to summarize what the residue wheels are is they're a spoked wheel, as you see there, that rotates by ground travel. So they are riding above the openers. So when the openers are lifted, they are the reason the wheels come up. And then when the openers go down to pressurize into the ground, the wheels just naturally run on the ground. They are coming in at an engagement angle to self-drive based off of your speed on that. So that answers the one question how deep does the residue wheel tine go into the ground? And have you ever bent any? So depth goes in based off of your conditions and or a limiting factor on the wheels themselves. I'm just going to bring up a new picture here. We do have what I'm going to be kind of highlighting here, if you can see my cursor on the right hand side. These limiter bars is what's going to stop the residue wheels from coming up too high, and then the only thing stopping them from continuing to go farther in the ground is either the opener bar themselves or just strong ground. So one thing we know already with the SR is the entire unit is designed for a no-till atmosphere, I guess, or field. Loose soil or excessively loose soil takes away from the traction or the tractive effort of the residue wheels. I know, Marcel, you do a single pass in either the fall or worst case scenario if harvest doesn't allow for it in the spring. So you did have a one go over of tillage, if you want to call it that, with your NH3 application, and it still worked. Last year, so spring 2019, we did have one of the prototypes working and seeding some hemp up in northeast Saskatchewan. It was incredibly dry there. The soil was starting to just kind of chunk out. It was that dry. So the operation did pro-till very aggressively the land. So residue was a non-issue at this point, but we did see that if you encountered any residue, the tractive effort of the wheels was not there and limited its feature. Key to the design is the drive line within the wheel. So over 60 feet, we do have the trash wheels or the residue wheels in gangs of 5. So you have the center section behind the unit is all interconnected as one, and then each wing section from there. The drive line is designed so if we encounter an obstacle or a key bit of trash in one spot, you should have enough drive line power to move through. With that. Now, I want to make this clear to make sure there's not a misconception with the Ultra SR that you can throw residue management out the window. The Ultra SR definitely gives you the capability to seed through different conditions, but our goal with it is to be able to seed through the same amount of trash that a traditional 3-rank drill would be, and in some cases maybe better. But one of the strong points is to leave a better field finish. And that's where I go back to Norbert's mention of the perfect row. When residue becomes an issue on multiple ranks, we get the beaver huts or the piles out there. You are never going to see really large piles behind the SR. This is a drone picture of a unit that was seeded. I'm going to try to zoom in. Out this year. So if you can see in this 60-foot section that's in the center, you can kind of pick it out a little bit. But that's the SR, and the passes on both sides are a 12-inch competitor dual knife unit. Now, it doesn't look still too bad because of the elevation, but we are leaving a nice cascade of residue behind and really spreading it out, so we're not limiting consistency, I guess, of emergence on the unit. We have a question here on what is the life expectancy of the trash wheels. So going back to the wheel themselves, it should be quite long. Now the tines are designed to be replaced. This is the same steel as a heavy harrow tine from a quality. This is an area, to be honest, we're not 100% sure what life expectancy is yet, and is something as we continue to get acres on it. What we do know is our goal is to either make it incredibly inexpensive, so you replace that every 2 seasons, that might be, to replace the tines, as tine length will be key to how good the residue management works. And then as we get into that, does that become in certain conditions wear them more aggressive than others? And you might see then us looking at a carbide tip option on that. To add just while I'm continuing, so back to how the trash wheels are interconnected. So every other opener has a hanger bracket and how they're connected. And so within that unit is a shear pin system, which is right now currently a double roll pin. And then on the alternating ones is a baler belting, if you want to refer to that, like material. And the reason for that belting is to allow a different shear point, but the main thing is to allow flexibility. So if we encounter a rock or a large obstacle and pile at this point, the trash wheels can come up while not affecting the residue wheels, 2 feet over, 3 feet over, where it might be. So
just going to bring up, like we did about 1,500 acres with the SR, and people say, well, you don't have stones on your farm, and that's not accurate. We run 2 rock pickers 6 days a week for 6 weeks during and after seeding, so we pick a lot of rocks. And yeah, we did bend 1 tine only, and so I thought I would share that with the group today. And it was easy to change out. We even, as Dutchmen, we tried to straighten it, but it's a very hard material, so we were unable to straighten it. So we had to put a new one on that was available to us.
Okay. I'm going to try to pick through some of the questions here on that, just more specific to this. So again, we got one from JLo. With the Ultra SR having the trash wheels between the openers, how does the drill and openers handle corners? Is there any bunching, or is there better separation of the openers? And does this matter if you're seeding headlands clockwise or counterclockwise? So I'm going to bring up again, first, I got this photo, which actually I know you'll actually find this on Peace Country Equipment's. They just posted it today. I believe this is from this morning, but this is wheat. One of the things we know on all precision drills, they are very much designed to seed in a straight row. When you start to go around corners, you do run to the issue of the ranks starting to bunch together. That makes for uneven row spacing, as well as the potential if you're doing a high rate of one pass of seed burn. So this is a huge benefit of the Ultra SR in the fact that you can seed on a curve and maintain that row spacing with that. I'll bring up, this is at the time of seeding, but again, you can see just from the furrows within that how we're able to maintain that row spacing. Jayla mentions the seeding clockwise or counterclockwise, and I'm not going to remember this answer off top of my head, but we do place all the openers in the same pattern. So traditional drills, we mirror openers, meaning that seed is placed either left of the fertilizer knife or right of the fertilizer knife. On the SR, because we have that capability, we do line that all up in a row. Just trying to pick through some of these questions just related to residue. Louis Wolf asks, are you doing anything for field prep before going into cereal stubble with the SR, harrowing, etc.? Marcel, you've already mentioned that your I guess field prep is your NH3 application. You don't do anything over and above that, correct?
Right. Like we don't do any harrowing ever, and you know, if we're direct seeding with anhydrous, we're also not doing anything. It starts with the combines, like we were all taught in the early 90s, and our Claus combines seem to do an excellent job of residue spread, and we keep the knives sharp and replaced on time and everything. So we've had no issues. But yeah, this year, everything that we did with the SR was spring or fall anhydrous. And by the way, the residue wheel had no issue with fall or spring ammonia. And but yeah, I can't share any more than that.
What we saw for some of our other units and compared to the previous couple years in trials. So one thing we got finally this spring is we had a wet spring in a lot of regions. I know that's not specific to your region, Marcel, but we had not really had that yet in dry years. So as for the field prep, my opinion of residue management, it starts at the time of harvest at the combine, whether that's investment in a combine that has really good chopper on it, new knives, whatever. Managing starts there. We specifically see a use of a lighter harrow, like so a heavy harrow or a 7-bar harrow, going over if we are into heavy trash. Let's say you had a bumper crop, a once over, definitely it works great. We've also seen the SR go through trash where it's not been dealt with at all. It's heavy and it works. It's going to come down to what are you planning? Do you want to run nonstop and really push it? More management, the better. We have seen maybe to the vertical tillage concepts of Pro-Till, Schulte Soil Star, whatnot. That's where I guess you're going to want to be cognizant of the idea that too much incorporation or loose dirt could be counterproductive. So we're going to move through some of the questions, just trying to handle. So I'm just going to work my way down from the top. Sorry. Boris has a question to you, Marcel, on what brand of applicator you use for your anhydrous ammonia application.
Yeah, so we have some old 5710 Borgo drills. Well, that 14-inch from 2002, we had on the dugout hill, so we put it back into service. And yeah, we bought another one on 12-inch spacing and put ammonia through it.
Perfect. Len, we got a question on how fast can you seed comfortable? That's going to be a question for each of your fields based off of soil conditions, what you're seeding, moisture levels. We do know, because it's a single rank, that we're not throwing soil onto the following rows. So we do know that I'm going to bring up this picture, which some of you might have seen on Twitter today. This is canola seeded at 2.8 pounds, seeded on May 4th up in the piece. that's seated at 6 miles an hour. So we do believe seating speed can be increased, but again, it's going to come down to your soil type, your conditions. There's a lot of capabilities with you, the operator, but increasing speed incrementally does look like it should be possible. This may be a question maybe for you, Marcel. Have you seen any difference in lodging in cereals on wider row spacing?
So I guess I would have to say no, but you know, we are constantly, you know, like when you're running a fleet of combines and we tend to run 5, or now we're running 6. If you put 3 inches less straw through 6 machines, you pick up a lot of harvest capacity. And so we've been selecting varieties for shorter height. And so I guess, yeah, and our fertility is quite strong and whatever, but no, we're having no issues, but we're choosing better genetics to manage that. And we're working with some inhibitors as well, manipulator or whatever, to shorten the straw on the durum. They're not as advanced as spring wheat and short stature.
Quinn Wolf's got a question. We currently run an 80-foot Seedmaster and have a hard time not bending the end shanks when turning around rock piles, etc. Do these shanks bend when turning tighter? So Quinn, one of the bigger, usually when you're bending a shank, is there's a good chance, once you bend it once, for one, it's like steel. Once you soften it, you're now making it easier for that to ever happen again. You've most likely almost gone backwards at that point. 60 feet to 80 feet on a tight turn is, well, maybe it doesn't sound like it is, significantly a difference on your radius and how aggressive you're getting on it. This will be easier to maneuver around a obstacle based on the fact of the single pivot point, on the fact that we have a single axle. You know, running this drill, we get from a lot of the operators that have seen it, is it's a different feel than a traditional unit behind you right away. So you're going to have a different apex where you might be turning in tighter to the corner or turning away from it sooner than a traditional. So I would say we've greatly reduced that risk on it. Do the openers still lift individually at headlands? All our openers open or lift all at the same time on it. One of actually an improvement that came about from the SR that's on our traditional drills is we've changed a little bit of the way our hydraulics are routed and change our plumbing so the openers lift quicker overall. And that is something we learned in the development of the SR, which we implemented in 2020 on our traditional drills. So some of the customers who would have had a new drill this year or look at a new traditional drill are actually going to notice the opener speed being different. How does the durability of the single rank boom, so I'm going to mean you're mentioning the toolbar portion, compare to that of a frame of a conventional drill? And have you seen any failures on the prototype units? So long-term answer, hard to tell, as we're still in the early years. I've lost track, but if you count from the original prototype reworking, we've reworked multiple times. Have we seen failures? Absolutely. That's the best part. That's how you know you're doing a good job at designing and working on stuff. If you're not failing something, you're not trying hard enough, is probably a simple way to put that. So, and this actually ties directly into, so last year was our official launch for customer units. We very much intentionally sold a limited number, and we will actually continue to be doing that in 2021. As when you develop any product, there's stuff that you just don't know yet, that testing hasn't shown up. That could be different field conditions like we saw this year with being wet in spots. We're very much plan to stand behind this product quite aggressively. So by doing limited numbers, if we do come across new things, that allows us to do the right thing as manufacturer and replace it and make those adjustments and tweaks as we go. So there is, I would say, every version gets beefed up more. And when we say beefed up, that doesn't always mean more steel, heavier this, heavier that. It might mean we're looking at something different, to alignment, to just a design. So how do the trash wheels handle stony, rocky ground? We have absolutely bent tines at times. That's why they're replaceable. For the nice part is it takes the right size of rock, I guess, if you're catching. And that's where I mentioned the ability for these rubber portions to go up. The residue wheels are designed to have shear points in there. How high stubble can the machine handle? This is a great question in what we don't fully know yet. Most of our new customers and/or demos or testing has been done in what we refer to as the transition year. So that's, in a transition year means we're going into stubble that's not been seeded with an SR, so we don't line up perfectly in the row space and everything. Once you get onto 15-inch on 15-inch, we do strongly believe we'll be able to get into higher and higher stubble as the ability to see between the row gets easier and easier. You're lining up to previous years. So what can we do? We're honestly not 100% sure yet, but I strongly believe we'll get into some heavy stuff. How does the machine handle smaller rates for cover crops? We're going to transition a little, I guess, then to Ultra Pro. For people that aren't aware, what I'm showing here is the Ultra Pro meter. So these are the two tanks. What you would normally see in this spot is a slide coming down that's going to show up right now. So that's what's actually catching the seed. So I'm just going to go back to the first photo. So the metering is run electronically on the Ultra SR, which gives us a large range of ability to slow down and speed up. They're all individual row meters. We do not use any towers or anything on the units. If it is low rates and small seed, the most accurate way to meter then is going through our canola or our fine meter, which is this small one here. We're eliminating and creating a small meter gap and spot. So this is what we use for canola. I mentioned 2.8 pounds was the one photo. We have customers that seed alfalfa, ryegrass has been used. So we believe we have one of the best advantages out there for low rates and small seed. All right, how seed safe is 15-inch spacing when using higher rates of starter fertilizer in the seed row, or do you put all starter fertilizer in the fertilizer knife? Marcel, I'm going to let you take that at the start on what you do for your operation for seed place or non-seed place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we are always double shooting, and in the case of inoculant with pulses, I guess, we've done both. We put the seed below in the fertilizer knife and put the inoculant above, it's above and over to the side. And we've done both orientations with lentils or soybeans with no differences in yields, by the way, that way. But on fertilizer specifically, we're always putting it down the fertilizer knife and none of the seed.
Perfect. As just, I guess the one option I'll mention is obviously, depending on your rates and your plan, your fertility plan, you could potentially always cause that. That's an operator choice. We at Seedmaster are very big as well on no seed place fertilizer if you can avoid it. We have one of our customers that's ran the Ultra SR for 2 years. Does run quite high rates in a one-pass operation, with majority of that going down the fertilizer knife. Just like our traditional units, you do have the capabilities to lower the fertilizer knife an additional 3/8 of an inch to create that separation. That is something that they do. I'm just going to, I'm not intentionally missing some of these questions, just trying to put them in there. I see there's a comment, pro-tilling works well as long as it wasn't pro-tilled when very wet. Otherwise, it just flips the stubble over and doesn't mix very well. In all fairness, it causes any drill to turn into a rake if it's just flipped up and not mixed properly. I'm making an assumption that is coming from a customer that either owns a unit or demoed a unit this year, so I appreciate that comment. Doug Wolf is asked, do you find that seed bounce is an issue And is the system for air brakes or the need for it noticeable? Because we're not running a tower, all our hosing is horizontal. I use the term, it gives the operator the confidence to dial in their fan speed a lot nicer. I find operators on all air drills dial in their fan speed and then increase it a couple extra 100 RPM just so they don't plug. Because we're a horizontal, I don't see the need for seed brakes. Marcel, what do you see with Ultra Pro metering from a bounce standpoint?
Yeah, so what I'm seeing this spring is just fantastic again. Like we're using the Ultra Pro through all of our seeders, including the SR that we demoed, and so we're always trying to go very light on our air and managing it well based on recommendations. It's working very well. We're not seeing a bounce issue in it, but we're trying to scrutinize seed rates, and but it's just we had a lot of moisture this spring in the soil, and things came up excellent. So
okay.
Yeah.
We had a question here: how much fertilizer can be put down, and in other words, how rate is it capable of? So on that is going to be a bit determined on your speed, but if you're looking at our fertilizer tanks, we have 2 tanks. We know just from metering from 1 meter that at approximately 5 mile an hour, depending on an average fertilizer blend, about 290 pounds per meter is our limiting capability on the meter. As for fertilizer overall, so both meters metering into the fertilizer stream, we were hitting 400-pound rate and higher in spots in that 5 to 6 mile an hour range. We believe the SR is not limiting in fertilizer down the fert knife from a what are you willing to put down at once. I think, this is my own personal opinion, when you start looking at anything higher rates in a one-pass operation, higher than 450, are you wanting to do that risk all at once? That's up to an operator, but we have been very pleasantly, very happy with what the rates we've been able to hit are. Is the SR better for side to hill skewing? I'm going to go back to its design on the fact that it's a single axle, so we're putting weight onto the tractor, and we only have 1 axle towing behind, so there is no tow behind or tow between cart adding to the skew, and our openers are there. So I would say quite confidently, we've never done a specific test to that. We are. So I'm going to, just because we're running long here, just move on real quick. A question we get quite often is about to filling. We have intentionally so far left off an onboard filling option, and there's some reasons, I guess, for this. Is we continue to see the industry trending away from the want for an onboard conveyor. We as a manufacturer and working closely with some of our customers can struggle with the return on investment of the cost of a conveyor when it's truly looked at all the componentry, regardless how maybe other manufacturers price it in. It comes down to, you can go buy a Brandt or a Conveyall, a Meridian, Batco, whoever's it might be, field conveyor with a mover that you can use 12 months of the year for the same price as I'm going to end up putting a conveyor on for you. And that field conveyor is going to do a better job. So we remove a lot of weight. We remove the inability to ever have the perfect conveyor there. I have the picture up as the tender unit. This is probably the end-all be-all that some customers want to get to. We know this is not potentially an inexpensive option. I mentioned the Brandt conveyor. This is something here we see. This is a 1547. Fills incredibly fast, fill up time. The maneuverability with the SR and the fact that you can pull in, we have very large, wide opening lids on the fact that we're a non-pressurized tank. So you don't have to be perfect every time. You have the ability to back out of it quite quickly. Marcella, I know you've gone through a transition of the years on how you guys feel. Do you want to, I guess, elaborate a little bit more on how you've done or your process to filling.
Yeah, so this year we did add the Convey-All Tridem Semi to our fleet, I guess, and we just absolutely love that. It works so good. Now, historically, about 5 or 6 years ago, we just stopped using the onboard augers and or conveyors to go to exactly the image we see here. We have a 90-foot Reliant belt conveyor. We still use that, and it works well. And we're able to maintain and feel the position and just drive underneath it. And the filling is so fast that we just continue to transition that way. So I think you're probably going the right direction there by letting the farmer innovate and or industry to provide that solution to faster filling.
Yeah, no, that's and I guess I want to make a statement for anyone that is very committed to the onboard. It's not saying 100% that we will never put an onboard fill. It's just not as high on the list as other options. We talk about weight overall is a key aspect to the Ultra SR. The Ultra SR dry is approximately 46,000 pounds. An onboard conveyor could, depending on its mount and the length of it, is in that 3,000, potentially up to 4,000 pounds of total weight. It's never centralized weight. It's always off to one side. As well. So weight is something. Compaction in other markets is maybe a bigger issue. It's definitely something that continues to have a key discussion point here in Western Canada. When you look at some of our competitors that are out there, if they're building a comparable 60-foot unit with comparable capacity, one of them that launched new stuff this week, their 60-foot and equal capacity combination, it's an 80,000 pound unit. Well, I don't want to force you to drag and buy a tractor to drag around 80,000 pounds and given the wet season, 80,000 pounds, once you plant that is harder to get out. So does the Seedmaster support sectional control, variable rates, all GPS, or some GPS terminals that you should avoid? So our operating system is it comes with a Raven Viper 4 system. It is an ISO system, so depending on your complete plan with variable rate and that you can use other systems that you already have in your tractor, whether that be a John Deere 4640, 2630, Ag Leader, I believe is in your case, Marcel is what you guys, or no, sorry, you're Trimble, not Ag Leader. You can use it, but they are four product variable rate capability. We are a 4-section zone or sectional control, so every 15 feet right now is what shuts off. And because they're electronic meters, we do have the capability for turn composition or turn comp as that technology enters the air drill landscape. So in an effort to wrap things up here and just kind of tie things together and where the SR is going, we have a wish list of options and goals towards the future that is quite big. Don, I've not been avoiding your question. Don Williams puts in here, are you looking at going narrow row spacing with this machine, 14 or 12 inch? I'd be lying if I haven't said we haven't tested and looked at other row spacing. We still strongly believe in wide row spacing is a very viable option for farming in all aspects around the globe, especially here in Western Canada. But we know there's a market demand for tighter row spacing. So we have absolutely done testing in that area. It is not as simple as just adding more row units. There is a lot in the design that has to be. Is tighter row spacing around the corner? I can say no, that if we are to go that way, that is going to be years in the future. What I can say quite confidently is our next steps. So I've got a picture here. This picture is actually of our prototype unit for this spring, which tested a wide variety of potential options for us. So What I can say is this design in the way the tanks are laid out and the walkway is what we will be going to for the Ultra SR for 2021, so spring 21. So key big changes on that is the tank layout to a degree. We switch our orientation on our seed tanks, which are the front tanks. We're going to our 60 bushel tanks actually at a lower spot, which allows for a lower platform of entry. You can kind of see here that the chains are actually off and opening, but the idea of the platform here is you have the capabilities to back up with a pickup truck if you are loading canola bags, and from the tailgate you're easily able to add those bags to it. It allows for a wider mouth on the small tank if you're loading with a mini bulk and you're using a picker crane, which I know, Marcel, you guys use on a service truck, I believe you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the walkway is probably one of the things too. We allow for access from both sides at the hitch. We allow for an angular walkway that comes up and a little more space and it moves to the other side. The other option that will be a known option for 21 is the addition of electric roll tops, tarps. These will be a Michaels roll tarp, and we're excited to offer that as an option moving forward. Without getting specific on anything else, the overall capacity will stay approximately the same. We're probably moving from 735 bushels to probably a slight increase of 735. That additional bushel capacity will come on the fertilizer side. We will stay the same on that. So we look to be 60, 240, 150, and then 300. And then just some other things that we'll continue to push is just an overall focus on fit and finish. That comes down to where electrical lines are ran, hydraulic lines are ran, and a very big push on overall user friendly for day-to-day activities with the SR. So I know we have two more questions that come in. Tony Fast, good customer of ours in Montana, asks, is 60 is the widest? Currently, at this point, 60 is our focus. As we continue to add in the wish list is a wider version on there, potentially. I'll be honest, a 40-foot is a higher want from a global aspect before a bigger one. And then Shane here asks, if you're only putting seed down the seed run, then you are wasting 250 bushels when seeding canola. Agreed, if it's only canola that you're doing and you're not putting any seed plates variety, yes, you have what you might deem wasted capacity. Our goal right now is to not make just a specific canola machine. While we know there's customers looking at the SR in compared to a planter option as a canola only machine, but this has to be versatile. So if you're wanting to seed wheat, durum, oats, barley, whatnot, capacity in every aspect is required. So I think I got another one, but I apologize if I missed the answer, but did cereals perform well on 15-inch spacing? Marcel, if you want to just quickly review again that answer on what your opinion on cereals on row spacing is.
Yes, like I could have articulated a little bit better. We're not perfectly flat, but we are pretty flat. We do have some rolling hills though, and we do some drainage work from slough to slough. And I was just so impressed with how uniform. There certainly is a new level of uniformity. It's higher hanging fruit, and it's maybe not going to measure in higher yields, but it sure is impressive. And so that's what we're seeing with our cereals. I showed a picture on Twitter a few weeks ago, and I think you might have it in your arsenal or your carousel here. I'm not sure, but yeah, the derm looks fabulous coming out of the ground. So yeah, that's the image there. I just was quite happy with what I was seeing there. And I had the other drill is also on that field, and yeah, it's something that probably won't measure anything, but it was impressive to look at.
No, agreed. We have two more questions that come up. There is a paired row an option. Paired row opener is not an option. I could go into great lengths on why we haven't done that. The main, I guess, answer it is we have yet to see a paired row opener prove its worth. It adds draft. It reduces seed placement accuracy given the variabilities of soil flow characteristics. Is it something that eventually could come down the line? I don't want to be that guy that says we'll never do this and then eventually we do it. We know that there's customers asking for it. We come back to the question of return on investment, and it has unfortunately not proven that to us yet. So the one question is, have you seeded corn with this unit? Rich at Peace Country Equipment, they did do a small amount of corn with their demo unit. I might be wrong this, but I believe it is for grazing use. They seeded it at 15-inch row spacing. Excited to see. We do know the customer had pretty big or great reviews back on that. If you want to actually, if you look up Peace Country Equipment, if you're a follower on Twitter, I believe they got some photos from spacing and that on it. Are we saying that the Ultra SR is going to be able to seed corn like a corn planter? There's a reason a corn planter exists, but does this have the capability to handle, you know, small acres for silage or grazing? We strongly believe it has that that potential. So I will wrap this up. A big thanks, Marcel, for your time, your input on your experiences with wide row spacing. We really like that. I guess I missed the whole poll, but I think we'll maybe take that as a takeaway and some answers and have some follow-up. There is an exit survey for everyone that will be sent out. If you want, please do that. A big thank you to our marketing team. They've done all the behind the scenes work on this. And for anyone that's still on there, I get a big shout out just to our entire product support team. That's our sales territory managers and our service team. We're done seeding season. To say that seeding season is not taxing on all the staff here at Seedmaster, it would be an understatement. But they relish in it. It's long hours as well for us, but we know we sell a product that's only used for 20 days of the year, and that's just like it is for farmers. It's our make it or break it time of the year. So a big thanks to all the staff that bust their butt to make sure you guys, the end users, have a smooth time. So we look forward to maybe doing some of these Q&A sessions in the future, maybe more on specific topics, but let us know how you what you thought, and we'll go from there. Thanks very much.